This is the second of two videos on Bill Clinton's foreign policy. As I've said previously, when the Soviet Union broke up, it no longer controlled a lot of Eastern Europe. And in the Balkan area, in the nation of Yugoslavia, a former East Bloc country, the country began to split up between its ethnic constituencies. The Serbians in the eastern portion of former Yugoslavia sought to control the western portions of Bosnia-Herzegovina and Croatia, where there were ethnic Muslims. Now, in Bosnia, there were also a lot of Serbians who wanted the region to join Serbia, and thus persecuted the non-Serbian Muslim Bosnians. After Bosnia-Herzegovina and Croatia declared independence from Serbia in 1992, the Bosnian Serbs, with the help of the Serbian government to the east, began an ethnic cleansing of the Muslim Bosnians. This genocide was televised to the world and just really horrified everybody. Clinton really wanted to do something to stop this, but Colin Powell convinced him that the U.S. shouldn't send in military troops. Nevertheless, in May 1994, after the Serbian forces invaded a safe zone the UN had created for Bosnians, Clinton authorized airstrikes against the Serbian positions. The massacres, however, continued, and Clinton then got NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization forces, to join the bombing. The bombing worked and led ultimately to the Dayton Accords, which are signed in Dayton, Ohio. It ended the Bosnian War and created two autonomous regions. After a couple of relatively peaceful years in the Balkans, the Serbian region of Kosovo in Serbia itself, they began to fight for independence from the nation of Serbia. And the Serbian government, of course, is not going to want that, and they began a campaign in 1998 to crush these rebels who were had different ethnicity and culture. And Clinton began to bomb them again. He got NATO to begin bombing again, and that convinced the Serbs to stop their attack. Serbia eventually agreed to stop fighting Kosovo, and the area remained contested for many years, but it didn't have the same level of fighting. During Clinton's presidency, with, of course, the Soviet Union gone, three former Soviet-dominated Eastern European countries, Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary, were free to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And the NATO was a Western mutual defense pact that had been originally formed against the Soviet Union. And so when its former eastern satellites joined NATO, Russia saw this as a threat. It was during the 1990s when Osama bin Laden created the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. That, of course, is going to be an organization that's going to stage the September 11th attack and become infamous. But Osama bin Laden had been fighting the Soviets when the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan in the 1980s. And Americas had armed Osama bin Laden. And Osama bin Laden was an extreme branch of Sunni Muslim, a very, very radical branch. And in the 1980s, when he was fighting the Soviet Union, America saw him as a way to get back at the Soviet Union, so they trained and aided him. But the Soviet Union withdrawn from Afghanistan, and now Osama bin Laden, who was very anti-Western, very fundamentalist Sunni Muslim, turned his angst, his fighting against the West. And so that was all forming during the Clinton administration. In 1993, a truck bomb exploded in the parking area of the North Tower of New York City's World Trade Center. Planned by an Al-Qaeda trained operative, the bombing failed to bring down the tower as the bombers had hoped, but it was still deadly. It killed 6 people and injured hundreds. Clinton began to increase funding for fighting terrorism, but didn't launch specific attack on Osama bin Laden, not only because it was difficult to locate and kill him, but also because he was afraid of increasing anti-Americanism in the Middle East and making Osama bin Laden even more powerful. But Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda continued its operations. In 1998, al-Qaeda operatives exploded bombs at U.S. embassies in the African nations of Kenya and Tanzania. Clinton this time ordered bombing attacks at sites in the Sudan and Afghanistan, which the U.S. believed to be involved in planning for these embassy attacks. Just before the 2000 election, in October 2000, al-Qaeda operatives, suicide bombers, got a boat and came up to a U.S. ship that was docked at a port in the country of Yemen, the USS Cole, and they blew themselves up in a big gigantic hole into the USS Cole, and 17 sailors died and 39 people were injured. So during the Clinton administration, al-Qaeda was becoming sort of a pain in the butt, and the U.S. was awakening to the real threat that it posed. But one more thing about Clinton's foreign policy was his relations with the country of Vietnam, who, of course, we had fought a couple of decades earlier. After normalizing relations with Vietnam, Clinton became the first president to visit the country since Nixon had been there during the war. It was Clinton's last foreign policy trip, and it took place just after the 2000 election. This concludes the second video, the last video on Clinton's foreign policy.